Welcome everybody to our first QUANTACAST Professional Series. I'm here with our favourite man at the company, Chris Carrigan. Chris, after our most recent QUANTACAST with Chris Ball as one of our special guests, we thought it'd be a great idea to put together a professional series where we invite guests in to discuss various things around the commercial property space as well as investment space. Some of the great feedback we got from Chris's particular episode was the investors loved the fact that they received some information about tax deferred payments, etc. What did you take out of that?
I think investor feedback was great on that, and we're really grateful to Chris for coming in. And for anyone who didn't see it, have a look at QUANTACAST episode 5, which is on our website. But there were some great strategies in there. For it, the one that particularly resonated with me was the idea of, if you're investing as part of your super or for retirement, investing in your accumulation phase and realising any capital gains in the retirement phase, and what that does in terms of how tax effective that can actually be, because you're getting the benefit of both tax deferred income and effectively a capital gain tax-free in the retirement.
Yeah, it's realised in the retirement phase, which is a far better tax break, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I mean, he's the best one to give the advice. That's how I understand it, but it sounded really effective, and there are a few good things that he talks about in that episode. But yeah, we thought it'd be good to have a few more professionals in that could give some insight and be informative for our investors.
Well, we're lucky enough today to have David Prosser with us. David is the director of Caden Office Leasing. He's been the director / owner of that particular business since 2014. He's had more than 25 years of office leasing experience. He's been with the likes of Cushman's, with CBRE and with Savills. So we're really pleased to have Dave with us today.
Thank you.
I know Chris has got a close relationship with Dave, so it's good to have you here, Dave, and I'll hand over to Chris to get some insight into what's happening in the market at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Welcome, Dave. Really appreciate you coming along. So we've been most recently working together on 157 Ann Street, which is the property in the Quanta Ann Street Trust. That's going really well. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But one thing that's really topical for our investors is how has COVID affected the tenant demand in the Brisbane office market, or the markets generally, and what are you seeing in terms of the future for tenant requirements in the market, and what building owners need to be doing to continue to attract and retain and make the best of market conditions.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. The post-COVID world's been good, better probably than what most people expected, and our Caden research shows that. Taking it back a couple of years, sort of to 2020 when COVID first hit, the premium end of the market was very static at that point in time. Most of the major decision makers were overseas, and the tier one firms pretty much put all their requirements on hold. So we were really dependent upon the SMEs to drive the inquiry at that time. And that's what happened. So the first 4 to 6 months of COVID, the fear phase, I call it, when everyone just was trying to digest what was going on, there pretty much weren't any requirements. So all of the leases that we were working on were put on hold at that stage. Then the acceptance phase came in, where people realised that they've got to get on with life. And then slowly but surely, some of the small to medium-sized firms kicked their requirements back into gear. And at that stage, it was really probably the 5 to 20 people offices, and those groups trying to work out how many people that they were going to have working from home and how many they were going to have in the office. And that was probably the case for a good 12 months. And then 2021, the middle of 21 to the second half of 21, the tier one firms sort of came back to market, dusted off their requirements and started to do deals. And what was interesting was that they were looking at their requirements differently to what they were previously, with some groups. And that was more the flight to quality trend of businesses saying, right, we value our office space. We want to have a good presence, and maybe we don't need as much space as what we had before. But if we drop off some space, maybe we can move into a better quality building, and that will make our staff happy and attract people back to the office. What's happened from that point is that technology these days has really supported the work from home policies a lot better than what it did post GFC. And the change that we've probably seen the most is that pre-COVID, agile workspace was being trialled quite predominantly through a lot of businesses, but that's really dropped away. The agile workspace, in my opinion, hasn't really stuck, okay?
When you say agile, you mean hot desks and more flexible working arrangements?
Flexible in the sense that people were coming into work not having their own desk and finding a desk to sit when they came in. Yes. We are seeing that through most businesses now that are adopting a style of agile workspace that even for people that work from home maybe 2 or 3 days a week, they still have a permanent desk. Okay, they might not have as much space per person, but those employees are wanting to know when they come in where they're going to sit. Okay, so as we moved through COVID and into 2022, the last 12 months have been particularly positive. There's been a lot of transactional activity in the premium market, and that premium market now is very tight in terms of the amount of space for lease across the 6 premium buildings. So vacancy in premium is sub 1%. That sort of goes up and down a little bit, but around the sort of the 1% mark is sort of where it's currently at. So what that has meant now as the knock-on effect is that those A-grade owners who have got good quality A+ grade buildings are going to start to pick up some of the briefs that either get squeezed out of premium stock or can't get into the premium buildings to start with. And that's actually been a very, very positive sign for A-grade owners. And there's been an increase in face rents. So as the premium buildings have increased their rents, so have the A-grade towers. The A- and B+ have done the same. And even in B-grade buildings, we've seen rents go up significantly. We've had instances where building owners purchased buildings sort of May time last year and have seen $75 a square metre increases on their face rent. So generally the demand's been good, the rental increases have been very positive, and we're finally now just starting to see a little bit of pushback from landlords on incentives. So we're thinking the balance of this year is going to be very positive.
So if I was to summarise sort of some of the key metrics of the market since post-COVID, overall vacancy has gone down post-COVID.
It has, yeah.
Rents have increased. Mm-hmm. Incentives have stayed largely the same.
Yep.
And then so looking forward, how do you see that supply-demand ratio working in terms of and its effect on overall vacancy in the office market moving forward?
When you look at the supply side of the market, there's no major supply additions due in the city until middle of 2025, which is interesting. And I think what we're looking out for now is that most vacant spaces, particularly sort of sub 500 metres, have spec suites built. Okay, so landlords are attacking the spaces, building spec fit outs, presenting the tenancies in a way where they're pretty much turnkey, that tenants can come in and just start working in those tenancies. What we're keeping an eye out for now is what's going to happen when incentives reduce to a level that they actually don't cover the fit outs. So there's no rental abatement on those deals, okay? That will be the equilibrium. You say, well, here's your fit out, no rental abatement, there's the rent, off you go. Beyond that, it's okay, well, the incentive pool doesn't cover the fit out, so then does the rent go up to cover the residual amount that they've put into the fit out? Do lease terms have to grow? So we're just at the very, very beginning now of landlords going, okay, well, the vacancy rates have probably come down to a point where, and I'm talking AM premium, so that prime sector, there will be a lag to the secondary market, but that will come probably towards the back end of this year. But we're now starting to see that little bit of pushback from owners that are saying, okay, well, no, we're not going to go above 40% on the incentive, or we're going to hold our line on the annual increases, or no, look, the bank guarantee is what it is, we're not going to move on that. Not across all parts of the deal, but in some parts of the deal, landlords are starting to get a little bit firmer in terms of their expectations. And that's going to be interesting for the balance of this year, because I think some tenants are going to have to readjust in terms of their expectations coming into these deals.
Yeah, it was an interesting point on that, Dave. I actually wrote down, does that mean that, with the more premium fit out and the money spent in there, whether that's incentive or otherwise, have to top up, therefore you would imagine the terms will start to get longer because you don't want to go and put your hand in your own pocket if the incentives aren't increasing to put money into a fit out for, say, 3 years. So the terms you would imagine will start to increase as well?
It's interesting because some of the global firms have policies that only 3-year leases, well, there has to be a break clause, which doesn't really do much for the building owner. So, and that's what I'm talking about, the adjustment in terms of expectation. I think there's going to have to be a little bit of adjustment on the tenant side in terms of the deal parameters that they've been used to and what they might expect going forward. I think in the top end of the market across the premium buildings, I think most of those groups that demand to be in premium assets will pay what they need to pay because they value the space. And particularly in the environment that we've been in, where it's very, very difficult to get staff, that's going to continue for a period of time. The floodgates aren't going to open in the next, let's call it 6 months. I mean, there will be more and more people coming over, but I think the fight for talent is here to stay for a period of time. And I think at the end of the day, it will be more important for the businesses to pay the rent that they need to pay to get the space that they desire, to make sure that they've got a platform there that they can offer to their existing employees and employees that they want to attract that is of a quality that is akin to the types of people that they expect in their business.
So turning to 157 Ann Street, which has been a focus for both of our groups for you before us, I suppose. But so we acquired that asset in late September of 2022, and we've been working together on the leasing, and we've got one vacancy left, and hopefully by the time this podcast goes to air, we'll have that spoken for. What do you think has been driving the appeal of that building in particular? I have a view, which is obviously why we bought it, but I suppose for the sake of conversation, why do you think that has appealed so much? That building has appealed to tenants so much?
The SME market's been very strong, very, very strong. And I think when the SME market's strong, boutique floor plate buildings do well, okay? Because most small to medium-sized firms, unless there's a real desire or there's a need for them to be in an A or premium grade building because there's global policy or some other reason that they need to be in those types of buildings, SMEs like the smaller floor plate building because it actually gives them some presence on the floor, and that's what 157 Ann Street's got. So a 430 metre floor plate in there is absolutely ideal. The other thing is there's no columns on those floors, so when you look at the fit outs that have been built, the efficiency is terrific. And you're pretty much getting a space reduction in that building of maybe 10 to 15% comparatively to what you might get in a building where there are columns on the floors, and tenants do value that when they look at the figures. Okay, so that's been a benefit. The location speaks for itself. Anything close to public transport in Brisbane, you should be able to lease if you present the space as well. And I think overall, the amenity that's going in there has been a really good news story. I know you like going to the gym, Chris. I'm sure the ice baths and everything in there will certainly appeal.
Yes.
But I think that's a real hook for that building, having the new gym going in there, particularly a gym that isn't currently in Brisbane, again, wants to set a new benchmark in terms of the quality of offering that they're providing. So I think all of those things combined have really been the driving factor for the outcomes there at 157 Ann and the success that you guys have had.
The recovery centre will be a first for Brisbane. I don't think anyone has full service that this facility has, and that was key to getting that tenant in. They wanted to make sure their staff had access to that facility, so that's got a strength gym, it's got meditation, it's got ice baths, hot baths, salt rooms, massage, all Pilates and yoga, and it's a superb kind of attribute to offer your staff. And the owner of that facility was more than happy to extend a corporate deal to occupants of the building. So yeah, it certainly played a role. But I always thought that in leasing an office building, there are, apart from the fundamentals like getting the commercials right, getting a configuration that suits the tenant and a tenancy size, beyond that, three really important things are it's got to have views, amenity, and good car parking, and which we certainly tick. The views up there, particularly on the higher floors, are fantastic. The amenity in between Central Railway Station and Queen Street Mall is fantastic. And because we've got one occupant taking out 40% of the building and not using any cars, we've got one of the highest car park ratios in the city, so we can offer tenants the most number of cars per square metre of virtually any building in the CBD, and that's certainly resonated with a lot of tenants. So hopefully by the time this airs, we'll have it all locked away. And I think, so if you've seen when this goes to air, if you've seen, it will be all over Facebook, and it's been a lot of work.
Fantastic. Well, look, that was great insight. I really appreciate you coming in today, Dave, and we'll have you back any time.
Thanks for having me.
Clearly know what you're on about there, which is great, and we really appreciate the work that you and the Caden team have done with 157N, because you've been pretty relentless in helping us fill the vacancy. So much appreciated, and once again, thanks for coming in today.
No problems. Thank you.